Diana Sullivan in Austin, Texas, with my first video about how to use your ribber. Now I'm starting these ribber videos at beginner level, so I hope people that are a lot farther along will be patient, but we don't really want to leave anybody behind. Now I'm going to show you first of all that when you add a ribber, you're adding a whole additional group of needles. You are doubling your capability to knit stitches. Where I previously had 110 needles on this machine, I now have 220 needles on the machine. And the carriages are set up differently now too. Once you get your ribber assembled and your ribber arm on according to your manual, what you want to do to begin is set everything for plain knitting. Now in my case that means I want this lever right here, which is a choice between free slip part and normal to be on normal. This lever, same idea, only it's for when you're going to the right to be set on normal. I want this P and R lever to be set on R because that's normal. The P is actually for tucking. And I actually want to turn this to the tightest possible tension. On the main bed carriage, I want all my buttons out, which is the plain setting, and I want to turn this tension dial down to the very tightest setting, which is, on both carriages, it is below the zero, tighter than the zero setting. Here I have set up the needles for 1 by 1 knitting. That is knit 1, purl 1, knitting. And it's often written in machine knitting patterns 1x1. I have every other needle on the main bed. I have the end needles on the main bed. Then I have the in-between needles on the ribber. And I have this set because it will go a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left according to the way I change the racking on it or the pitch. I have it set so that if all the needles were out, these needles would match up to each other, but they don't. It's very important in ribbing that you avoid needle collisions. Now I'm going to go across and back over the needles just to even them up. Once my needles are even, I want to put yarn in the machine so that I'm threaded and ready to knit. So I'm going to go ahead and put some yarn in the machine and knit across. That will be my zigzag row. Here's that zigzag row up close. See how the yarn goes from a knit needle to a purl needle to a knit needle to a purl needle to a knit needle. All of the circular cast-ons that you're going to do will begin with some kind of a zigzag row. This is very typical, this 1 by 1 zigzag row. The carriages must be set for circular knitting, which means it's going to knit to the right on the main bed, and then it's not going to knit on the main bed. As it comes back, it's only going to knit on the ribber, and then it's going to go to the right again and knit a third row on the main bed. So, set the left part button on the main carriage, set the right part lever on the ribber. The circular rows have to be a little looser tension than the zigzag rows, so I'm changing both carriages to tension 2, and I'm knitting 3 rows. This is the comb, and I need to hang the comb now before I can do the circular rows. And I put it in between the 2 beds, and I bring it up in between. I remove the wire. I like to remove it partially so that I don't have to pull it all the way out and push it all the way back in. After I remove it, I lift it up in between the 2 beds so that I'm hooking all the knitting, and then I just push the wire back in the whole way across and let it drop down. I'm using 2 weights. The manual for this machine suggests that you use a weight for every 20 stitches, and since I have about 30 stitches, 2 weights is fine for this. And I'm also hanging a clothespin on the free end of the yarn so that it doesn't tangle or give me any problems. It's necessary to loosen the tension for the 3 circular rows. So I have done that. I brought it up to tension 2, and I knit 3 rows. That completes the cast on. Now to switch to the ribbing, after doing the cast on, I'm going to change the tension to the ribbing tension, which in this case happens to be 4. And I'm going to cancel the part button on the main bed, and I'm going to cancel the part lever on the ribber carriage. Then I'm going to knit a few rows of ribbing. When my ribbing is finished and I want to go to plain stockinette for the body of the garment, I need this tool. It's a double I transfer tool. And what I'm going to do is lift a ribber needle up by putting the tool over the hook, up, down. That puts the stitch on the tool, and then I just hook the stitch on one of the main bed needles, the one that corresponds, and that is how I get my ribbing stitches onto the main bed. And I'm going to do that on a cross. I did do a garter bar video on how to move ribbing stitches, but I want you to get familiar and comfortable with this tool because you will very often use this tool. Now, one of my shortcuts that I do, and a lot of people don't do, but this is something I like to do almost every time, is I bring the ribber needles out to hold, and then all I have to do with this tool is the push down and pop up part. I don't have to do the lift up part. So I'm going to do that off camera. The ribbing is knitted. I have changed the main carriage back to its normal fabric presser, and I am threading it with the yarn. I'm loosening its tension up to whatever the garment tension is supposed to be to get my gauge, and then I'm going to knit some rows and take this off and show you the completed ribbing, which is a band. It's an edge ribbing. I popped the ribbing off the machine and just hung it on the gate pegs. It's the ribbing, and then it's a little sample of stockinette above it. You would always do a sample like this if you were going to do a sweater. You want to see if you like the amount that the ribbing pulls in compared to the sweater. You want to get the relationship between this tension and this tension to look good. And if you want to see how this curled up, it's like a rolled edge, the circular cast on looks. Let me bring this up this way, and you can see how the individual bars of the knit stitch come down, and they widen a little bit at the bottom, and they come around to the other side. That's that zigzag row on the very bottom that gives it that kind of a rolled edge. There are other edges. There's another cast on that's very popular for 1x1 rib that I'm going to show, but this is a really important basic, so I want you to get busy and practice your circular selvage. Remember, you are going to use the circular selvage for this 1x1 rib, for 2x2, and for full needle rib. You are even going to use it if you want an unusual needle arrangement like knit 9 and purl 3. You're going to use this kind of a cast on. So that's how to do the circular cast on the ribber.